Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. From Eden to eternity, the Bible tells one big story of redemption. My name is Tiffany, and I want to spend a few minutes with you every day walking through the Bible chronologically. Together, we will explore God's sovereign plan as the events of Scripture unfold and point to Jesus. Welcome back to another episode in our Year in the Bible journey. My name is Tiffany, and we are currently camping out in the book of Genesis in the patriarch period. We cut chapter 18 a little short yesterday, so we will lump it in with chapters 19 through 21 today. So let's go ahead and dive in. At the end of chapter 18, Abraham sees his three visitors off. Two of them, who we read are angels in Genesis chapter 19, verse 1, journey down to Sodom to see the depravity that's there for themselves. Abraham stays with the Lord, and the Lord reveals to him the plan for Sodom. In this moment, we see Abraham's growth in his faith journey as he intercedes on behalf of the righteous people in Sodom. Abraham's prayer is a great example for us as he began by stating who he knew God to be, a righteous judge. He was also persistent and specific in his request to the Lord. Though Abraham walked away not knowing the outcome of his prayer, he walked away knowing he could trust God's plan. As we begin chapter 19, it's important to note that we can't specifically pinpoint Sodom and Gomorrah on a map today. Based on limited biblical information about the ancient land areas surrounding these cities, many scholars believe that they were once located in the area we now know as the Dead Sea. Given what we read today about the depravity of these cities, it shouldn't be surprising that these cities are possibly buried under a sea where nothing can live or flourish. Chapter 19 is difficult, but it serves as a necessary warning for us on many fronts. In chapter 19, the angels arrive in Sodom. They likely looked like ordinary men, but upon seeing them, Lot knew they deserved honor. The Bible tells us Lot was sitting in the gateway, which in ancient culture signified he was a civic leader. But Lot's life among those in Sodom was marked by compromise, not godly leadership. We quickly see that the whole city was immoral, violent, and sought to gratify their sinful desires in whatever way they wanted. We see this clearly as the mob surrounds Lot's home and demands these men be brought out so they can, in essence, rape them. Our first reaction to a chapter like this might be that it is too blunt or harsh, or we might be shocked by such depravity. But when we stop to think about the world we live in, we quickly realize these same sins are at the forefront of our own society. Homosexuality is a direct violation of God's design for the sexual union of a male and a female in the covenant of marriage. The Old Testament condemns homosexuality in Leviticus 18:22 and 20 verse 3, and the New Testament condemns it in Romans 1:26 through 28. This mob had allowed their sin to overtake their hearts, and nothing was off limits. Sin never produces a better moral code or standard, despite how we try to spin it. While we might be shocked by the response of this mob, we should be no less shocked by Lot's response to give the mob his daughters. It is helpful for us to make a cultural connection here. Sadly, women were treated with low respect in ancient cultures. We obviously see that here, but hospitality was taken very seriously in this period. True hospitality meant that you valued your guests even over your own family. Neither of these reasons justify Lot's actions, but it does show us how easy it is to compromise and follow societal norms and not the Lord. The angels respond to this depravity by blinding the men in the mob. Their eyes became darkened just like their hearts. The rest of chapter 19 details the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as burning sulfur rains down to destroy the cities. Sadly, the angels had to physically remove Lot, his wife, and their 2 daughters from the city. And we read that Lot's wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt as they fled. Lot's wife reminds us that looking to the world for hope and direction actually ends in compromise, despair, and death. Only a life devoted to the Lord and a heart given to Jesus provides righteousness, hope, and eternal rest. Lot's continual compromise in his life spilled over into the lives of his daughters, as we read how they commit incest with their father in order to have children. These 2 children, Moab and Ben-Ammi, become the fathers of the Moabite and Ammonite nations, 2 nations that will be brutal enemies to God's chosen people, the Israelites. Taking matters into our own hands always causes sinful consequences. We see this as we return to the life of Abraham. We spent a great deal of time in chapter 19 today because we don't want to gloss over the difficult passages in Scripture and miss the vital lessons they have for us. As we come to chapter 20, we see Abraham struggle with a past sin, fear of man. Abraham once again worries about what the king of the land will do to his family if he doesn't lie and say that Sarah is his sister. The king takes Sarah into his household, and Abraham's lies affect Abimelech and his entire household until Sarah is returned. It is ironic that Abraham's reason for this sin is that there is no fear of God in Abimelech's kingdom. Sadly, Abraham condemned himself with this statement as well. Abimelech, a pagan, obeyed in a way that Abraham failed. Though Abraham sinned once again, God remained faithful to the covenant. In chapter 21, the long-awaited child is born to Abraham and Sarah. God was faithful to his promise in his time and for his glory. Isaac was just one fulfillment of the many promises God made. He was the start of the great journey that will lead us to the Messiah, the ultimate fulfillment of each of the promises. As Isaac grows, hostility quickly arises between Ishmael and Isaac. God ordains the decision to send Hagar and Ishmael away, even though Sarah suggests it in anger. Though it might seem harsh to send them away, Isaac was the promised child through which the nation of Israel would be built, and Abraham was called to focus his time on the son of promise. God would care for Ishmael and Hagar, just as he had promised in Genesis chapter 16. God was still El Roi, the God who sees. We covered a lot of ground today and learned much about how serious God takes sin and the fulfillment of his promises. He is both just and merciful, and these 2 attributes can live together perfectly in our holy and perfect God. We will continue to see this as we walk through Scripture together. Thanks for joining me today. I will see you back tomorrow as we study Genesis 22 through 24. Bye, friends.